Hello there, I am Charlotte Skogsberg, and I am very happy to have you visiting my website. Welcome to my world. I wanted to share a few words with you explaining why I do what I do, really. So, if my work is shaped around yoga and psychology and Ayurveda, it is because once upon a time I was living very far from all of these three domains. Back then, if I had had the possibility to get a bit of a kick off start to make changes, I would have loved having that. However, I did not, and therefore it gave me many insights as I made my way through several years of understanding how I function. And when I decided to study psychology at the university, it came as this urge of trying to understand the human behavior. Um, there was a drive beneath it that was really a question of understanding myself, just like anyone else who finds themselves in these professions. There is a deeper seeking. It is not working with products, it's not working with numbers. It is really the unscientific side to the world because it is the human mind. So it's very hard to make rules, and so we're intrigued by it. But it's the same thing with yoga, really. Anyone who is drawn to yoga always have a deeper seeking that's lying deep down inside of them. You might not realize it at first yourself when you step onto your mat for the very first time, but there is a reason that you are there. There's a reason that you didn't choose to go to a Zumba class or a football game instead. So there's always a deep down quest inside of us when we take this journey of the human mind and the psyche. Now, the reason that it becomes very hard to actually do something with this is because we are also human. And humans have one more important priority compared to wanting to change, for instance, a behavior. And that priority is, of course, survival. And our survival mind is much more interested in staying with what's familiar than trying new and exciting things. So this is the main key, really, to take away when it comes to having the understanding on a theoretical level about things and then finding it very hard to actually live by them. It is not really the way we are wired. So, me, myself, some 10 years ago, I was living in a very different environment to now. I was in my early 30s in a big city in the corporate world, and I was working from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening, except for Fridays when we would go out drinking, of course, on happy hour after work with all the colleagues, comparing our sale goals and such things. I would overtrain. I would train every day. It did save me to do this because it gave me a new routine, which is really essential. But what I was doing was really counterproductive as well because I didn't really come from the right intention with this idea. And so I would do this even after being out drinking until the wee hours of the night and still get up very early and do my training, which meant that basically my body was on fight or flight constantly, trying to survive, trying to recover at some point. I would therefore, of course, be exhausted and anxious, and I would overeat as well, because then, of course, my stress eating increased even more. I would naturally be drawn to all the things that are really not that good for my body, would be, of course, fat and sugary and these kind of things, saturated fats. And so I was really, let's say, kind of the typical client that I found myself treating later on. So if you would, for instance, visit the case studies that are on my website, and you will find the everlasting to-do list, or the overachiever, or the good girl syndrome, or the workaholic. I had points from each and one of them 100% inside of me, which is probably similar to what a lot of people will feel when they actually read these case studies, because it's also how society has shaped us. So my self-image was completely filled with expectations from society, with limiting idea about who I was, what I was capable of. Naturally, due to these things, the intention that was behind my training, my eating, my working, my socializing was not a genuine one of well-being for myself, but it was instead scarcity and shame, fear of failure, of course, linked to shame naturally, and fear of missing out, basically. Okay, so I was really far away from where I wanted to be. And my relationship with things like food or toxins was trigger and reward based. So I would be triggered very easily, and then I would reach for the toxin or the food or whatever it was as a way to feel better because I got a reward feeling from that. So I was in this loop, and I wasn't very happy, and I wasn't very healthy, and I was just accepting it because as far as I was concerned, well, this was all there is. And it isn't. And it took me some time to break out of it. And usually what happens is that we find ourselves in a position where there's no turning back. All right? Because, once again, our mind is more focused on survival than on wanting to change things. And this means that as we want to change, for instance, a situation, we will not do it unless something happens that puts us in a position where we have no other choice. And then the survival instinct switches on and we'll take ourselves out of there. The same way as the very famous telling of the mother in a car accident who becomes so strong due to the survival instinct that she managed to lift up a car to save her baby that was stuck underneath it. True story. Okay, so I have been through the whole thing. I have had the issues with food, with alcohol, with cigarettes. I have had the issues with my body. I have had the issues with parents, siblings, friends, work colleagues, bosses, love, of course. And what actually gave me the keys to change was as I enrolled in my very first yoga course. So as soon as I started practicing yoga, I would only feel benefits on one level. And a little bit after becoming a teacher, I started to notice that there were so many links to the Western approach of psychology and psychotherapy. And so throughout the encounters that I had with clients, because we get the clients we deserve, right? I would recognize so many things in myself and with them, and they would also experience things that came to the surface that were more linked to a psychological aspect, and we were practicing physically. And so little by little, I started to develop my online course that is called the Self-Image Project, that you can have a look at on the website, and you can even watch the video where I explain a little bit more about it. And as I did my yoga teacher training, and we were living after the Ayurvedic principles during this training, because it was a traditional training with Indian teachers, I also started to notice that there was changes in my body and in my mind, and a clarity, a lighter way of being, actually, that happened while I was in this training, but I didn't understand where it came from. And so it took me a long time also, when it came to Ayurveda, to understand, to make the connection between how I was basically splitting up my day in the rituals and the routines that I had, and how I would approach myself depending on my constitution, and that would then change my behavior, it would change how I feel, and it would change how I looked. So, little by little, I came to this holistic approach, really, I want to call it, of implementing the three domains together, working perfectly for finding balance in life. And that's what I want to share with you. Thank you for listening these minutes, and I wish you a lovely visit on my website.